We'll see. It's working. It heard it working somewhere. Yes, it is working on this side. Right. Okay, Philippa, over to you.
Well, this is very exciting. Yeah, so I'm Philippa from the podcast All About the Archers, and we're talking today to the gods of the Archers, Liz John and Keri Davies.
No, you're not.
You have quite a bit of the power, so we have lots to unpick here. Now, Liz, some of your recent scripts included Beavers, Rochelle, Helen's House Buying, and Neil's Birth Family Story. And Keri, your recent stories included Joy and Mick Moving to Home Farm, The Fallout from Sewage, Celia Sparrow, and Wayne Not Returning. So there's a lot to unpick here. Let's deal with the basics first of all, in case people aren't aware of all the roles that you have. So Liz, when you get an outline of each day and the cast, then you need to write it. What's involved with all of that?
Well, we sort of do the outline. What we get, we're almost a step sort of before that, I think. We've got the cast that Jules, by the way, I wrote her sausage roll episode, so that's made me smile. That was a story I didn't know. But we've got the cast that she has cleared, but when she's cleared it, it might literally be they're available, twice in my block. Or it might be that they're available in Keri's, but not mine. So I've got to start swapping days with Keri, just studio days. So I get the cast that's available. I get the stories. Now I break that down into what happens each day in a process. We call it writing the synopsis. And that's basically a scene breakdown for each episode. But I have to take those stories and prioritize them and also think about what goes with what, because it's nice if a story resonates within an episode. When sometimes if you've got something that's really deeply sad, you don't want to put it with a comedy. Or, I mean, maybe you do, but the tone needs to be right. So we sort of do that sorting out, working out how much of the story is going to be told in each episode, but also making sure that I pick up from where the previous writer left it in terms of where the character was emotionally, where the story was, and what the tone was, and then leave it. For say Keri, I'm leaving it at a certain point with my Friday hook so that he can pick that up and run with that.
Can I just ask about that? Because there might be certain gems that you put in the script for the week that might not be immediately obvious, but they're little gifts that you're leaving for the next scriptwriter like Keri to pick up. Do you have a WhatsApp group where you can secretly put those things in?
We do have a little chat, the writers, but it's funny you say that because you can be quite naughty sometimes and leave less of a gift, but bits of a time bomb. So you can leave a few little problems that you say will be sorted out next week, and then poor old Keri, for example, might then have to sort it. So we do have a little bit of fun.
Sorry, Liz, there are 4 of us writing at any one time simultaneously, and we are in constant contact with each other, and often I might invent something in my week. I might have, there might be a bit of a gap, and I know that I've got to invent a little story or something, and I probably ask the writer in the week before, who's writing the week before me, to just drop a little mention in, so that it doesn't just come out of the blue in my week, just to set up something, and I tip off the person in the following week just to say, if you could just do a little back mention of this. So it's a very much a collaborative process, isn't it, Liz?
Definitely.
How many words do you have to write then for a week?
Well, it's easy by the episode. Liz, do you have a specific target you aim at?
Well, this is a really interesting thing, I think, because my episodes are always long. So I could write 2,500 words, let's say, and I'll be long. And when Jules says 14 minutes, I suspect if she looked at the name on the script, it would be mine, because mine are often long, and I don't know why. and then, you know, someone else might write 2000, I don't know, 800 or something, can be about right. So it's weird, isn't it?
Not including the title page, I tend to go for 2600. But you get the feeling for, I mean, if you've got a lot of young characters, they whiz through a script, you know, they really talk quickly. If you've got a lot of big emotion, it'll go slowly. In fact, I wrote the episode not that long ago where Alice came round to confront George before the trial. And I just knew that was it was going to stretch, so I deliberately wrote it short. But they do in studio, they do prefer you to have written a little bit long, because then they can just cut out bits. And we do mark up potential cuts in studio. We know, you know, where we're just giving a bit of color, or, you know, I try not to cut out jokes and so on, but, you know, more detail than is absolutely essential for the story. And we mark those up, and that it's easy then for them to cut it in studio down to time. If you've written short, you know, wrongly short, as it were, rather than intentionally, they suddenly have to write stuff in studio. And as it's a very, very tight process for time in studio, that's you try not to give them that problem.
And Liz, are you writing in stage direction and sort of sighing and other effects that aren't words, but the actor is including as part of their script?
Yes, we write. So someone was, you know, I did do one where someone was making a salad, and I regretted that because somehow the chopping, I tend to go into studio when I can because I live locally. I'll go into studio, and I find that really useful to see how the actors sort of interpret, you know, what I've written. But you also then see how people, you know, the sound effects people are trying to struggle with. My completely random, really didn't matter, did not need to be cucumber being chopped, but is now creating the most massive problem. So, I mean, that anyway, it's a learning experience for me. But yeah, we do write in pretty much all the stage effects, don't we? Sound effects, Keri?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we have to, we have to portray the whole scene on the page, really, because, and sometimes you can just say, makes a cup of tea under, you know, and then cup of tea on the table. As long as you've left enough time, you know, it takes time to do these things. So you've got to actually make sure you have got enough dialogue there. The other sort of stage direction that we put in, you try not to tell the actor how to read every line, but sometimes if it's ambiguous, I will put in a you know, disapproving or something like that, just to make it clear that you know, the intention of the line. I also love the non-verbals, so I will sometimes put in literally just in brackets something like uncomfortable, no dialogue at all, and leave the actor to work out the sort of grumble, grunt, groan, wheeze, whatever, out breath, in breath, that works for that character. Yeah, I think that's much better than trying to write MFPPH GGG. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
A classic thing, just to nip in there, is of course boiling the kettle. Which, if you you know, if you imagine so many scenes, you know, someone walks in, oh, would you like a cup of tea? Now you'd put the kettle on. Well, that's going to mess up your entire audio. So we have to find these incredible ways how you come in once the kettle has boiled. But then Home Farm got a special, I don't know what they're called, you know, when it comes out boiling, the tap. There's a name for it. And that was brilliant. It's like you've solved our cup of tea problem.
Well, let's go into some of the recent storylines. Liz, I mentioned you'd written about the Rochelle storyline, and Neil. Obviously, the Rochelle storyline has evolved this week, but some people listening may be waiting for the omnibus, so I don't want to spoil that. But there's a responsibility with dealing about the impact of childhood, which we saw in both those storylines, Neil and Rochelle. How did you sort of handle those?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's all about mothers and daughters, isn't it? And
And
I've
Simons.
loved writing it. I've absolutely loved writing it partly because we sort of have the space. And I mean, I don't mean see where it goes, because there's obviously plans for the future, but within certain restrictions, Rochelle has been fantastic, because there's just been that relationship between Joy and Rochelle has almost emerged on the page sometimes. And it just, sometimes, as you're writing it, you know this feels real, this feels believable, and sometimes it's not quite what you were asked to do. So then you do potentially have to talk to people about whether this is working. No, I don't know, sometimes maybe you can't shift something, but with Rochelle and Joy, that's been lovely. I think a similar thing was Philip and Gavin, when Gavin came in with the modern slavery story, because again, their relationship, we perhaps set out with a particular view of it, and then somehow the two actors gelling, and I don't know, you just sort of hear hear the history. It's really weird. You can feel that background and that history. So it's been lovely writing Rochelle.
And the storyline with Neil and his birth mother. You keep giving us dribs and drabs, and we want to know everything.
Yes, no, it's and Neil is such a lovely, honestly, he's so lovely to write for. You could do a whole episode just with Neil. He's just fabulous.
Keri, can we talk about humour in some of the recent scenes we've had that you've written? The Celia Sparrow episode, which was absolutely classic. I mean, it's just joyful, and the cleaning up of the sewage. I mean, are you laughing in an evil way as you are writing these hilarious scenes?
You're laughing in a delighted way.
Yeah.
Celia Sparrow was a particular gift because, as Liz said, we are writing, to a fairly tight program. There's not usually not a lot of leeway in what we can do. But I'd actually, I knew there was space in my week for a sort of extended comedy scene of torturing Helen. And so I just went for it, and I did a lot of research about cheese to make sure it was actually authentic. And and yes, I just thought, because I just thought when I was doing it, I thought this is one of the absolute delights of this job, because it was absolutely right for the story. It drove the story forward, but hopefully, it would give people a chuckle. And the response I've had is, that, yeah, it did seem to be successful for most people.
Yes, absolutely. And the sewage clearing up as well must have equally.
Yeah, I think it was particularly the fact that we had Mick and Joy moving into home farm there. That gave us the humour in that one. And again, that was fabulous, because it's it's a good trope, fish out of water kind of feeling. The cultures collide, and so I could have a lot of fun with that. But again, while driving the story forward.
There were some scenes, or a lot of scenes, that were written that had to be completely cut during COVID. Were there ones that you had written that you really wish we'd been able to hear, that you can tell us about?
I was the last writer clinging to the wreckage, basically. And in fact, there is a lovely episode that it was a whole week of episodes, including VE Day celebrations. So that was VE Day 75, 5 years ago, where I had Emma and Ed swing dancing at Grey Gables, and it will never ever see the light of day.
It's very confusing, isn't it? Because I was in that block as well. In fact, I remember ringing Keri and saying, do we keep writing?
Yes. Yeah.
Because they can't make this. They can't make this. And Keri very wisely said, just keep writing, Liz. Keep writing until they tell us pens down. And so we kept writing until we got a phone call saying, no, this can't be made. But what I found confusing with that was that I think we were bringing the modern slavery story. It was just starting to peak. And of course, I'd written whatever it was. And of course, then it all changed because of COVID, but that's still in my head. So what can be really difficult is trying to erase, trying to erase that. So for ages, I would be saying, oh no, this happened, didn't it? And people would be going, no, it didn't. And then you finally realize it's because it was from that missing block.
Oh, we'd love those to be made as extra episodes so that we could hear all those gems. You mentioned about the 75 years VE Day. Obviously, we've got the 75 years of the Archers coming up 1st of January. Now, clearly, we don't want any spoilers, but are there going to be big events happening? Can you at least tell us that?
It'd be odd if it wasn't, if there wasn't something planned.
Yeah.
Yes, the main anniversaries of the Archers are always marked with something special, and there is something coming. I think we've been vaguely told what it is, but I honestly can't remember, and even if I could, I couldn't mention it. But yeah, there'll be something special for the 75th.
Oh, very exciting.
As a little sidebar, I actually literally joined the BBC in 1991 when the 40th anniversary was being celebrated, and before I actually joined, they said, we're having a wedding reception for Jack and Becky Woolley in Broadcasting House. It would be really useful for you to come along, because the job I joined the BBC for was at that time was radio press officer at Pebble Mill, and I would be promoting the Archers. And so, having listened to the Archers for by then, I don't know, 20 years or something, I suddenly, before I'd even got my BBC pass, was there surrounded by all these Archers actors at this amazing event. So that anniversary, has a particular resonance for me.
You've got about 5 million of us who all think we know the storyline best and have our own views. How it must be incredibly hard to become a scriptwriter on the Archers. How would we go about applying?
Well, I as it were, came up through the ranks, and my illustrious predecessor Joanna Toy did something similar. She joined the production team as what was then called a production secretary, very much the sort of equivalent of the job that Jules is doing now. I I came across from my radio press officer role to fill an emergency vacancy to run 3 months of shows, public shows in the summer. Never left, but then applied for a permanent producer job, eventually became senior producer, ran the website for a while, and after 10, 11, 13, I can't remember, sort of very happy years, I was starting to think, I think I could write scripts, and so I did a trial script anonymously, and when it was not laughed out of court, I said that was me actually, and here's my suggestion, and so that was my route. What was yours, Liz?
Well, I'm actually an engineer. I trained as an engineer, electrical engineer, many years ago, and then went into technical journalism and drifted somehow, can't quite recall how, into drama. But I was writing for doctors before I shifted over to the Archers, which was a really useful ground, because the one thing about writing for the Archers, which is why, if I suppose it's not the first place to go as a new writer, because it is so intense. We are writing 6 episodes in 11 days. It is really intense. And then we might have Jules on the phone, or well, it wouldn't be Jules, but some, Jules has told someone that so and so Harrison isn't available, or whoever, and then a whole other strand can suddenly have to be changed, more or less on the spot, and sometimes after we've submitted the scripts as well. So it might be a really, literally, people during COVID, people testing in that morning positive for COVID, they can't come into studio. Now, maybe they can be recorded down the line, but maybe they can't, because their voice quality, it's what people have noticed with COVID, the voice quality changes. So then it might not match with previous episodes. So it is really intense. So having come from another fairly pressurized environment, I didn't find that a problem. But also you need that technical brain to go from, I mean, it's a maths, it's like a 5D Sudoku to get cast, the day, the stories, all that. You need a very particular technical brain, and then you have to change your hat and get into the drama of the thing.
Yeah, it's great because it's a real combination of art and science.
Yeah.
I think the sort of short answer to your question is build up a track record in drama writing and listen to the program, really know the program.
Thank you. Are there particular characters you both enjoy writing? I'm sure you enjoy writing them all, but there are other particular ones that you just set to writing with glee. Liz?
Well, I love writing comedy, so Jim, Susan, Joy, I love a lot of the Grundy stories. There's just sometimes the match of who you've got and the stories is just perfect. So I suppose I do like the light stories. Yeah, I haven't really got a favourite character, I don't think. I mean, they're all lovely to write.
Yeah, even the characters who you wouldn't choose to have a drink with, Martin Gibson, say, he's great to write, because he's such a blowhard, you can go certain places with him that it would be difficult to do with other characters. Yeah, they're all great to write.
Do you use the voices of the cast as you're writing?
You do, in the rhythm. You absolutely feel. At the first block I did, I remember thinking, we'd had a bit of a disaster at home, to cut a long story short, and I was having to write it in my bedroom, which is really not ideal, because I had building work elsewhere. And I remember thinking, this is either going to work or it's not. And I wrote it, and it worked. I could hear Peggy's voice. I think it was an episode where Peggy was sort of confronting Justin, what's your intentions towards my daughter, kind of thing, but in Peggy's fantastic way, where she would not let him get away with anything. And it came, and I when I finished them, I thought, actually, if I can write this in these circumstances with builders below and everything else, actually it's okay.
Yeah, and I think it's the other way around, actually. It's not that we use their voices. Their voices are using us. It is sometimes like taking dictation, because you just know these people, as well as your relatives, and they talk to you. You just write down what they say. You put them in this situation and you write down what you hear them say in your head. It's amazing.
And certainly I analyse a lot of the food mentions. Are you aware of how much analysis we're all doing on these little things, the music playing, the food?
Yeah,
if we were, I don't think we'd write a word.
Yeah,
it's too much. It's too much.
You are, but you need to put it out of your mind when you're writing, or you wouldn't write a letter. You wouldn't type write a word. Because I spent so much. I spent I think it was 9 years or something hosting the Archer's Message Board. It was a long time. I got to know Archer's listeners, or certainly those Archer's listeners who chose to communicate with us in that way, or to talk about the show in that way. And I still go on Twitter when it's my week, you know, and join the tweet along when I can, that sort of thing. So you know that there's astonishing, you know, whatever you're writing about, there are 20 experts at least out there, you know, who really know it. And there are people who, you know, I've got a relatively good memory for the history of the show. You know, I can't hold a candle to some of these people. But yeah, when you sit down, you've just got to think, I'm going to tell these stories now, and you mustn't think about, you know, what effect that's going to have. People often think, you know, we drop little references in for their benefit, and we honestly don't. It's not, haha, I bet the tweeters will love this. You know, it's just that it feels right for the story, for the situation, for the character.
But sometimes you do. Sometimes there's a little wink to the audience. I find sometimes I put something in and I think, oh, who's going to notice that? And also, will it get through? And sometimes it's funny, it will get through the script editing and the producing and the directing, you know, almost right through to the audience. And I know that maybe only 4 people in the country will get that little tiny reference, but it makes me laugh. So.
Just looking at which particular episode you've been most proud of, it might be massive moments or it might be the smaller moments, but that are still very significant. Keri, which are the ones that really stand out for you?
I'm terrible at this sort of question because I tend to be forward looking. I think, you know, I could be glib and say, oh, it's the one I'm going to be writing tomorrow, you know. I wrote, I've had the opportunity to write some amazing situations that have been performed so well and moved the listener to tears or to laughter, you know, either are great, really, you know. I suppose I'm particularly proud of Jim going up to the funeral of his you know, his abuser, you know, but you know, I've never kept a kind of, you know, track record like that. It's just not the way I approach my writing, really.
Liz?
I had a week where Ed and Emma lost their house. The mortgage fell through, and that was great because I was able to just really focus on how that happened and their loss and Emma's struggles to try and fix it, which she couldn't do. And that's about when I stopped looking at social media, actually, because after that, the social media response was very much anti-Emma, which was not what I had felt when I was writing it. It wasn't what I felt when I went into studio. It wasn't what I felt when I listened to it. But it did make my heart sink. It really made my heart sink. And
Liz,
I don't read anymore.
Yeah, I agree, Liz, that I remember that week very clearly. And you and the, you know, the whole cast and everything, you know, you really got the utter desperation of this woman. I thought it was a brilliant week.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
But you know, it's funny, isn't it? You think I felt like I delivered that well, and then I suppose it's just so interesting that people hear, depending on their experience, you know, the audience. It's the same. You know, I write for theatre, and in an audience, people bring their own background, their own history, their own perspective, and it's the same with the Archers. But it just makes you realize sometimes that it doesn't, you know, what you say is going to be received in many different ways. So to be honest, again, you're best to not worry because it'll cripple you. So
yes, we just want you to focus on writing those wonderful words.
Get in the zone, stay in the zone, don't come out of the zone. Yeah.
We've only got a few minutes left, but finally, I'd just like to know which characters surprise you the most when you're writing them, and as they've been developing, are there any particular characters you thought, gosh, I never thought they would develop in that way? Keri?
God, I'm drawing a blank here.
Well, they all change and they all develop
Yeah.
gloriously.
Well, shall I jump in while you
Yeah,
have
if
a
you've
think,
got some
Keri?
specific
I'll say Rochelle, but I'll say no more. But B, Jazza. I had the joy of writing Jazza and Tracy getting together. But that was interesting because when we were talking about Jazza and Tracy coming together, we weren't sure it would work. And some of the writers were saying, you know, you're taking two comedy characters. This could, you know, we could have less comedy characters if, but actually it's worked really well. And Jazza's character has totally developed, hasn't it? From what he was just a bit of a comedy sidekick, and now he really is. And Tracy, actually, if you look at Tracy, she was very much on the outside peripheral cast member. They're both at the heart of the show now.
Actually,
I think that's
yeah,
brilliant.
I'll put in a vote for Joy in terms of how the character has developed, particularly now that Rochelle has arrived. And I think the fascinating thing about that relationship is that they are both unreliable narrators in the story of their lives, and those two conflicting narratives, I just think is utterly fascinating.
Yes, I was listening to last night's episode, just absolutely agog with what was unraveling. And yes, we'll leave it for everyone to listen to the omnibus as well. But honestly, it's just been wonderful to talk to you and uncover all these gems about writing. I could talk to you for hours, but we've already exceeded our time, Cara. So I should just thank Liz, John and Keri Davies so very much for joining us today.
My pleasure.